It's struggle love with Bible verses attached to it.
What's up, y'all? It's Coach Roberta, your friendly disruptor and soul coach. I know it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Anyway, whew. So today in friendly disruption, let's talk about this.
Even though God showed me her, I was still walking according to my preference. I liked light-skinned, long hair, petite models, all that crazy nonsense. I like what I like.
Although it's called Dear Future Wifey, it is a humiliation ritual for Christian women. Men jump on here boldly and with their whole chest talk about how they settled for their wives. What he has never featured on his podcast is a woman giving an hour-long interview about the many ways she dogged her husband out, but how God came in, changed her heart, and they have a beautiful love story. It's struggle love with Bible verses attached to it. It glorifies being a wife over dignity, self-respect. It makes it seem like if you could pray hard enough, you'll get you a man. Even a man who didn't initially want you. Men have always tried to get women to settle. Now you're trying to say God wants us to settle too? Not the same God that said he would give us the desires of our heart. Most of us desire a man who's initially attracted to us, who wants us initially, who doesn't have to be prayed into loving us. You never tell men to endure mistreatment by a woman who didn't want them. You never tell them to pray and pray that God will change their heart and their mind. You never do that to men, but you always do it to women.
She said it's given struggle love with Bible verses. And I agree. I totally understand the young lady's disdain for this clip that has been making its round, and another one from the Dear Future Wifey podcast. So this clip is from September 2022. Now it seems to be making its rounds on a couple of platforms, and I suspect that it is circulating and recirculating because a few weeks ago, April 2025, an episode with Pastors Reggie and Kelly Steele aired, and that snippet was Kelly recounting about 20 plus years ago, where she said she ironed his clothes before he went out with his side chick. And so it received so much backlash, and rightfully so, that the following day, Latarius had the couple come back on an IG Live with a family. I believe she was a family therapist. She was a therapist by profession. Anyway, so people are probably combing through some of the episodes, finding ones that are more problematic. And so I want to talk about this particular thing that she brought up. It's giving struggle love with Bible verses. Now, Latarius did acknowledge on that IG Live of some lessons learned, some things that he would do in the future that might include a disclaimer around problematic conversations or something, just so that listeners and watchers don't walk away with the impression that these types of behavior are condoned and acceptable, and give the wrong impressions that endorse ideologies and bad doctrine and errant doctrine, or make it seem acceptable. So now that we got some context out the way, I understand the young lady stitching and responding to the clip. And the clip from 2022 was with Ryan and Kanita Rutley, and that it was triggering. It was. I get angry also when I see these types of narratives. And because two things can be true at the same time, the reality is, after the fall of Adam and Eve, struggle love with Bible verses, as vexing and as damnable as they are, became a norm. Let me be clear. I am not spiritual bypassing, so hear me out. I have read a number of accounts in the Bible where stories and situations are described. They are described. They are not prescribed. They are not prescriptions of what to do. They are just descriptions of incidences that occurred that to me look like a struggle love with Bible verses too. For example, Sarah on 2 occasions was asked by her husband, Abraham, the father of faith, to say you are my sister. Say you are my sister twice. This happened twice. Oh, okay, my glasses, but we're just gonna have to work with that. And this put her in harm's way. It made her subject to being acquired by kings or essayed by other men. And his reasoning is so that they wouldn't try to kill him because she was so beautiful and they want to take her. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely giving struggle love with Bible verses. And while this story describes what happened, it is not prescribing or endorsing what happened. Suggesting otherwise is bad theology used to coerce women. That said, the root of struggle love is in Genesis 3:15 and 16. And again, this is a description. And so again, I'm not spiritual bypassing. I'm wanting to create awareness around the root of these types of issues. And here's what it says. This is God's conversation with Eve after she ate of the fruit. It says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. So those are 2 different things. One can include the other, but even if you don't conceive, it's saying, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow you will bring forth children, and here it is, your desire shall be to your husband. That part's not a problem. And he will rule over you. So this to me seems to imply that before this happened, her desire was to her husband, but him trying to rule over her wasn't there. That's part of the curse. Before then, they were mutually empowered, right? And so this is a result of the curse. So this involuntary desire to love a man whose response to that desire would be ruling, not naturally loving you, but ruling over you, is a byproduct of man's fallen state and being expelled from the garden. We got to start there, folks. I know I don't like it either. I don't like it either. God knows my heart. We've had several conversations, and so, but it is what it is. Now, the verses preceding that, because this is where, again, it's important to be aware so that we know how to deal with the roots of this issue, right? So that we are not just addressing symptoms of the issues, because that whole manifestation in both of those podcasts with the Steels and the Rutleys, the snippet in some of those conversations, those are symptoms of a root issue. But here's what it says preceding that verse about the woman's desire being to her husband. It says, Genesis 3:15 15 says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman. He's talking to the serpent. And between your seed and her seed, it will bruise your head and you will bruise his heel. So it's clear that we have an adversary, right? We are not friends. And I know it's like, duh, no brainer, but it's clear that we have an adversary. And so whatever churn, the enmity and the hatred that is between the devil and us and him, and we should be angered and hated. So is he going to create churn, and is he going to make that rule show up? Yeah, he's going to take advantage of that, right? So when we read scriptures like, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and ruler of dark places, this is included in that. Again, this is not bypassing. It's just giving context that falls in that. That's one of the things, right? He's going to be a contributor to that. The good news is, I'm going to say that again. The good news is Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. What law is that? That is the law of sin and death. So that means we've been liberated from those consequences, but it doesn't automatically happen. Even if you're a believer, it doesn't mean that it automatically happens. We have to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. One of the ways to do that is, first of all, knowing what you're being transferred from, and the renewing of our mind about relationships. Because there's a lot of what we see in the Old Testament and women interacting with men that shows patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, and again, other things that fall under the curse. And even though God was talking to Adam and Eve, that sin that fell on the woman made all women susceptible to that. But one of the blueprints that I've read about, and I stand 10 toes down, if you guys have seen me in any other videos, if you've heard me talking, if you know me personally, I stand 10 toes down that I believe that one of the blueprints in the Bible in terms of relationships with male and female that are transformational, that is a transformational blueprint, is a Song of Solomon. Now, most people think it's just love poetry. I know there are, from a scholarly perspective, there are three different perspectives on whether they believe it is an allegory of God and his people, Jesus and the bride of Christ, or a relationship with the male and female. I'm not going to get into that, but I believe that the Song of Solomon is a weapon to be used for mass destruction to the havoc that has been unleashed on relationships. It's 8 chapters. It's probably the most extensive one on relationships of people that were single at one time and then got married. And as many single conferences that I've been to in the church, workshops, and we won't even talk about all the podcasts, Red Pill and all of that. And I don't expect them to say that, but I know that it has been oozing over into you know, some believers kind of believe that way also. But again, I believe if you have read it and studied it, because it really does require study, that one theme that I see throughout it is releveling of the gender power in relationships, and that was highly uncommon and unheard of in that time in history. And it includes Solomon, who would have been considered a high value man. I don't really like that term, but I realize that it is, again, a descriptor to bring people kind of quickly to what you're trying to say. It gives context, right? So by the standards that people use high value in terms of income, status, wealth, influence, all the things, he would be that, right? And yeah, I know it's like him of all people. But anyway, there's that. So here's one takeaway that I think we can all agree on. It is absolutely okay to be biblically angered by misogynistic and sexist ideology, and to address it. The Bible tells us to be angry and sin not. So yeah, I'm right with her in terms of calling a thing a thing. Yeah, those things that give struggle love with Bible verses and that are not properly don't have the proper disclaimers even when we are telling our stories, because some of us, we got some stuff to tell, right? But we cannot, it is irresponsible to tell those things and, I don't want to say glamorize it, but laugh at it and kind of couch it in a way where we don't give proper context, where we call out that was absolute, like kids don't try this at home, right? Those are some things, or that we do use them as lessons learned. I believe that the believer culture at large will continue to be subject to struggle love with Bible verses, even in platonic and basic male and female relationships, and relationships in general, if we don't acknowledge and attack the root of these issues and have the right biblical strategies and kingdom perspective on how to resolve them. Pee won't just continue to be in the pool. It will continue to spread in and throughout platforms, the pews, and the pulpits. Yeah, it will. It will. So, here's my call to action to you, or reflection. What's one thing that you might do differently if you haven't read the Song of Solomon, if you haven't studied it from the perspective of a future wifey? And I'm even saying that to males and females, right? Because we get a lot of input from men on what they're looking for in a wife and what we should be doing, and I get that. And so particularly if you are a minister of the gospel, it seems like this is something that should definitely be in your toolbox if you are counseling couples, right? And not just because I know it's poetic, it's got some very sensual stuff in there, and I get it. And most of the time that I've heard it used was to help the sisters, and sometimes we do need help if we have a improper perspective or we've had some bad experiences on how important being intimate with your husband is, right? So I've heard it used to kind of, just remind women that it's okay to be sensual and intimate and all the things, right? But I usually don't hear much more about that. And that's where I think it is a disservice. Again, it is 8 chapters. It is centered around a Black woman who is enamored by a king. So again, a call to reflection or action is this something that you would consider studying? And if you need help, put help in the comments. Until next time, beloved, I wish that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. This is Coach Roberta, your friendly disruptor and soul coach.